Local sports talk show, Drive Time Sports.
Self-aggrandizing, superfluous nonsense.
I mean, he's basically irresistible to people for the same reason he can pretty much only work at a carnival. He has nothing to prove or disprove.
Hello there. Welcome into a Tuesday edition of the show. So glad to have you, whether you're listening on your radio, streaming the show online at extrasports1300.com, or you've downloaded the new Extra Sports 1300 app sponsored by Diversus Health, mental health and well-being for all. And yes, a veritable cornucopia of sports topics coming your way over the course of this radio program, and I would love to get your take on all of them. 719 24/7 1313 is the text and the phone line for your convenience. You can also hit me up on X if you like at Gingerly Tweets. I'll get into the football games last night, especially the Baltimore-Tampa game, coming up in just a little bit. But I want to start with the NBA. The NBA season does open tonight. We'll call it a soft opening, as they'll get a couple of games underway, a couple more tomorrow night, and then the Denver Nuggets will open with the Oklahoma City Thunder coming up on Thursday. But the Nuggets had to get a bit of business done yesterday before the start of the season, and they got that done. Aaron Gordon has been locked up to an extension, and give you the deets. 4 years, $133 million. It'll take him through the 28-29 season. So essentially, he, Murray, Jokic, and Porter are locked up for at least the next couple of years, on to 3, in some cases 4. And there have been some other instances during this Denver Nuggets offseason in which contract extensions have been debated. One was not given to Kentavious Caldwell-Pope. One was given with a bit of consternation to Jamal Murray. This one is really not a debate, right? Whether they should or should not give Kentavious Caldwell-Pope an extension is a debate. Same thing with Jamal Murray. But Aaron Gordon, to me, there's not a debate. You have to sign this guy to an extension. You can't make the argument that you're trying to make when it comes to Christian Brown stepping in for Kentavious Caldwell-Pope. You also can't make the argument about reliability that you can with Jamal Murray. You can't, going back to Porter. A lot of people question the extension for Michael Porter Jr., and I understand that. And you could be on one side or another. It's not a debate with Aaron Gordon. Outside of Nikola Jokic, there is no one on this basketball team who is as much of a foundational piece and just solid in every way, shape, and form than Aaron Gordon. He's not the second best player on the Denver Nuggets. That's Jamal Murray. But to me, Aaron Gordon, it's not a question of whether the Nuggets should sign him to an extension. He was the missing piece to turn the Denver Nuggets into a championship team. And the entire time he has been in Denver, he has been reliable. He has done so much of the quote unquote dirty work that maybe that you shouldn't ask Nikola Jokic to do, and you probably can ask Jamal Murray or Michael Porter to do. So in some ways, you may be able to argue he is the second most important nugget, even though so much of their title chances this year hinge on Jamal Murray. But again, that's best, right? Jamal Murray's the next best Denver Nugget outside Nikola Jokic. But Aaron Gordon has been their best defensive player, their best rebounder. And all the while, he never gets as much attention as any of the other three members of this Nuggets core. But there's never the downside, right? When's the last time you watched a Nuggets game and were really critical of Aaron Gordon? I asked myself that question. I was literally trying to think about it today. I couldn't remember a time. And that's not to say that there aren't nights where Aaron Gordon doesn't play well. But what he is asked to do on a nightly basis, he rarely disappoints. You don't worry about effort. You don't worry about availability with him. He's always there doing the things that aren't talked about a lot, but they are vital to success. And that's why he was the missing piece to a championship team. And all the while, he's endeared himself to Nuggets fans to the point where he might be, outside of Nikola Jokic, the most beloved Denver Nugget. And whenever you think of Aaron Gordon, you think of him walking shirtless through the streets of downtown Denver, celebrating a title, having a crowd of people following him like he's like the Dalai Lama or something. Like he's Gandhi. I mean, it was a sight to behold that night when the Denver Nuggets won the NBA title. But just everything you want a key piece of your team to be as a human being and as a basketball player. And they don't have a title without Aaron Gordon. So this, to me, is a no-brainer. We debated Kentavious Caldwell-Pope a lot. Okay? There isn't someone on this roster that you could say, well, you know, if he projects and gets a bigger role like you do with Christian Brown as it pertains to Aaron Gordon. There's not. Okay? And even if you thought there might be in Deron Holmes, he's out for the entire season. So there's no debate. There's no one to replace him. There's no one. I mean, think about this. There's more of a conversation between Russell Westbrook and Jamal Murray right now than there is anybody ever supplanting or being a better fit than Aaron Gordon. So this is a piece of business that absolutely had to get done. Kentavious Caldwell-Pope, you can let go. Right? I acknowledge that. Now, I'm still going to say that they're worse off for not having Kentavious Caldwell-Pope. But I understand the economics of the situation. I understand what the plan is here. Losing Aaron Gordon, there would be no plan B. And you would have to seriously wonder about the Nuggets' chances of contending if they didn't have him moving forward. They had to keep him. And that's why it didn't nearly have the noise around it that Jamal Murray's extension or Kentavious Caldwell-Pope in a contract year did. Because everybody knew it. Fans, media, Michael Malone, Calvin Booth, ownership, everybody's like, no, this one's got to get done. It has to. And what's interesting about this, they say trades are never win-wins. Negotiations are never win-wins. Aaron Gordon today said at practice that he was looking for a win-win. And it's like, oh, come on. It might be a win-win. His contract is going to stay level. What he makes this year, he's going to make next year. And then the escalation start. And really, Aaron Gordon makes up what he's essentially giving up next year. He's making it up on the back end. Would he have, I guess you could still maybe argue it's not a win-win because Aaron Gordon, I'm sure in an ideal world, would get all the money he could immediately. But at least it wasn't a contentious negotiation, and it doesn't feel like anybody truly lost in the negotiation. Nuggets get a little bit of flexibility this year and next to really maximize. And then after that, at some point, you got to start paying the guy, right? This new contract has got to kick in. Escalators have to be built in, right? And then you figured out then. But for the next 2 years, the team you're going to see on Thursday night is the team with some wiggle room if they need to make a deal. And that's a big win for an organization that really let Kentavious Caldwell-Pope, I think, go because of the financial flexibility, because of their fear of the second apron. They're going to be underneath it this year and next year. And then there will be a discussion after that, but we'll see. Could the Nuggets have another title? 2 titles? No titles? We don't know. But for the next 2 years, this team is going to be able to operate underneath the apron with Porter, Murray, Jokic, and Gordon all together. So just another thing for Nuggets fans to love about Aaron Gordon. That he, even while he cashed in, and rightly so, he leaves some room for the Nuggets to be able to truly maximize the bulk of this championship window. They expect to contend once Aaron Gordon's contract goes up. But really, this is the time, right? When they won the title last year, this year, next year. Not a lot of teams legitimately get a 4-year window, and it looks like that's what's open to the Denver Nuggets right now. And Aaron Gordon helped a little bit with that. So now Murray's locked up. Christian Brown takes over for Kentavious Caldwell-Pope. Aaron Gordon locked up, and away we go with this Denver Nuggets season, which again begins Thursday night against Oklahoma City. I'll take your thoughts on the extension for Aaron Gordon. 719-247-1313. Just getting going on this Tuesday edition of the show. Coming up next, speaking of the Nuggets, Lamar Jackson reminds me of a Denver Nugget. I'll tell you who next on Extra Sports 1300. Welcome back, Drive Time Sports. So, yesterday, I and many others I found in this line of work discussed I was not as original as maybe I thought I was when it comes to the take that Jared Goff is now the front runner for the NFL MVP. And no sooner did I say that on air yesterday than Lamar Jackson goes out and goes absolutely berserker and has 5 touchdowns against the Tampa Bay Buccaneers. Now, I am not changing my take because, again, we talked about this a little bit late last week. What Derrick Henry is doing needs to be taken into account, and how much that is also propelling the Baltimore Ravens right now. But I was thinking about this with Lamar, and I believe I made, either in my head or on air, maybe both, made the comparison between Lamar Jackson and Nikola Jokic. One, just how much in awe you are watching them. It's just crazy sometimes to watch these two guys play their respective sports. So that's first. Second, there is an underappreciation that has gone on for a long time with Lamar Jackson. Same with Nikola Jokic. I don't think either player is there right now. Right? Nikola Jokic picking up his 3rd MVP, Lamar Jackson picking up his 2nd MVP. I think that both are respected enough and the right amount. But what I will say is that what Lamar Jackson did last night reminds me of some Nikola Jokic performances over the last couple of years, where we are ready to some degree to anoint someone else, right? Maybe part of our reason to do that is just our craving of something new, right? We don't want to keep giving MVPs to the same guy, right? Michael Jordan didn't win MVP every year. LeBron hasn't won MVP every year. Like, we crave some change, something new to talk about. And I think there's part of that. Maybe it's just subconscious. But anytime you may start to stray and look somewhere else and say, maybe this guy is the best player in the NBA, or maybe this guy is the NBA MVP, or maybe this guy is the NFL MVP, it always seems like Nikola Jokic and Lamar Jackson pop up with some crazy performance. And then you're just like, oh yeah, them. And then you get conflicted about it, as I was last night watching Lamar Jackson. I'm like, am I really going to stick with Jared Goff? And I think the answer is yes. I'm going to stick with him now. But it almost, for two guys that have publicly said that they don't care about the MVP, and you know what? I believe both of them. They sure do have a great knack for putting together a monster performance, just as it seems the national conversation has moved away from them as the MVP of their respective leagues. It almost feels intentional. And if Lamar Jackson and Nikola Jokic weren't so upfront about not caring whatsoever about winning MVPs, I would believe that they were reading press clippings, watching First Take, reading social media, and saying, I'll show them. Because it seems so often that when you try to get away, and this even happened last year with Lamar's MVP season, right? It seemed like there were a couple of games where people started to move away from him and were like, yeah, I think it might be this guy. Not a knock on Lamar Jackson necessarily, but just like, you know what? Maybe it's this guy. And then Lamar Jackson had a huge Sunday. And then you're like, okay, well, Lamar Jackson. It feels intentional. Last night felt intentional from Lamar Jackson. I'm still going to stick with Jared Goff right now. But even then, it goes to another parallel that I find between Nikola Jokic and Lamar Jackson. For years, you're wondering, can the Nuggets and Ravens get someone else? Is there someone more? And with the Ravens, the guy hasn't been on the roster. With the Nuggets, it's been Jamal Murray hurt. It's like you think it's Jamal Murray, and it proved to be Jamal Murray. But he was absent for those playoff runs. And you're just like, man, if Nikola Jokic had a little something else, that would put this team over the top. And it's felt the same way with Lamar Jackson and the Ravens for years. As great as Lamar is, it felt like something was missing. And we always went to the passing game. Right? He just doesn't have the weapons. Well, then he had Mark Andrews. And that didn't amount to anything. Does Lamar Jackson now have his Jamal Murray in Derrick Henry? That additional piece to finally break the Ravens through to get back to a Super Bowl, back for the franchise, back for John Harbaugh, not for Lamar Jackson, to get to a Super Bowl for Lamar Jackson. Is Derrick Henry serving the same role as Jamal Murray did a couple of years ago for Nikola Jokic? It feels that way. That he has someone now. And you want to talk about how Jamal Murray and Nikola Jokic complement each other? I mean, watch the Baltimore Ravens and how well Derrick Henry and Lamar play off of each other. It just fits. It just works. And it's not like we didn't think it would work. But you watch it over these last few weeks and you're like, my goodness, this is just an even more perfect fit than I thought it would be. We all thought it would be a great addition for the Baltimore Ravens to add Derrick Henry. And then you see it and it's like, it's so much better. It's a little like Jokic and Murray, where it's like, you watch it and it works so much better. So perhaps we shouldn't put Lamar out of the MVP conversation just yet. But I will say he and Derrick Henry together are forming a partnership that may be enough to finally get the Ravens over the hump. That was crazy last night from both of them, Derrick Henry and Lamar Jackson. Take your thoughts, 719-247-1313. Coming up next, I will be joined by comedian Brad Williams. He's rolling through Colorado Springs early next month, and you may recognize that name or recognize his face because He's been spotted at a few Broncos games recently. Comedian Brad Williams, my guest next. Yes, indeed. Welcome back, Drive Time Sports. My guest today is going out on tour, and he will be coming through Colorado Springs on November 3rd. He'll be at the Pikes Peak Center. He's a star of both television and movies, appearing on The Tonight Show, Jimmy Kimmel Live, and movies like Little Evil and Mascots. But where his bread is buttered is the stage, as his stand-up comedy specials have blown up on Showtime and Netflix. Brad Williams joins me. Brad, great to have you, man. How are you?
Hey, and don't forget maybe the number one celebrity Broncos fan. That's because there's not a lot of celebrities that apparently like the Broncos, so they're able to go D-list with me.
It's you and Lindsey Vaughn. I think that's the list. I'm glad you brought that up because I was just saying in the segment, teasing that you were going to come on. I'm like, you may have seen him at some Broncos games recently. You're from California, though. So explain to us how that all came about, that you became a Broncos fan.
Well, I mean, my dad went to Stanford, so he wanted us to support a Stanford-led team. That gave us two options. That gave us John Elway with the Broncos and Jim Plunkett with the Raiders. And because I wasn't born with face tattoos or priors, that means I can't be a Raiders fan. So we chose the Broncos, and thank God, because it's been a good run over my 40 years of life. I've gotten to see three Super Bowls, so nothing wrong with that. And this year, holy crap, we have something we haven't had in a while, and that's hope for the future. What a time!
You did get the better. You did choose wisely in that regard. But yeah, how do you feel about Bo Nix?
Dude, Bo knows football. Eat a bag of Nix. I'm all about it. I think he's good. I think people have to remember that, you see someone like the guy who's in Washington right now. I'm blanking on his name for
Daniels.
somewhere.
Yeah, Jaden Daniels.
Yeah. You see Jaden Daniels, and you think like, oh, that's what your rookie is supposed to be. But people forget, there's a lot of rookie quarterbacks that are great now, but like their first season struggled. I mean, Peyton Manning is the ideal is the situation that a lot of people go to, where he had so many receptions his rookie year, and then I think he turned out okay. So I see a lot of promise with Bo. I see him being calm in the pocket. I see him using his legs. He misses some throws, sure. But the fact that Bo Nix has more touchdowns and less interceptions than Patrick Mahomes this season, I think that's a good sign.
Yeah, it is, and I have seen it. And I'll just full disclosure, Brandon, please don't hang up on me. I am a Colorado born and bred, but I am a Chiefs fan. So, and
that's okay.
Being here in Colorado and hosting a talk show, it certainly comes up every now and again.
Sure, I have no doubt. And hey, the thing that you and I have in common is we both hate the Raiders, so we can bond on that.
Yes,
and it's fine. When you were growing up, the Chiefs didn't have such a good go against the Denver Broncos. Now it's your time with perhaps a top 5 greatest quarterback ever. So it's okay, man. Ebbs and flows. Totally fine. I'm happy that if the playoffs started today, I looked this up this morning. If the playoffs started today, the Broncos would be in at a 7 seed, and that is something that we haven't been able to say in a long time. So hopefully Sean Payton, Bo Nix, hopefully they can keep going.
Did you have run-ins at all with Raiders fans while you were growing up a Broncos fan?
I live in Southern California, where even though we have the Chargers and the Rams, I would say that the Raiders are still the top fan base here. So yeah, I would have run-ins with Raiders fans all the time. Thankfully, no one really wants to. I'm a dwarf, a little person, a person of short stature. I don't know if you could tell by my voice on the radio. I don't talk like people think I should talk. People think I should be like, "Oh, but I'm gonna be a toxic Santa." November 3rd, took us. Woo-hoo! Like people think that's how I'm supposed to sound. But people didn't really want to bully me, because if you punch a dwarf, that's a hate crime. So I was fine. I'm good. So I had a great childhood growing up and being a Broncos fan. Totally good. And I love that the team has been so great to me and nice to me and let me come to some games and put me up on the big screen. And let's face it, when people see a dwarf dancing on the Jumbotron, it gets the crowd hyped up. So they've done it a few times. And when the Broncos do play the Chargers, I think it's December 22nd at SoFi, I will be there.
Oh, that's awesome. Brad Williams, my guest. I was wondering if the Broncos would put you on retainer or something to get the crowd hyped up, because you did do a really good job of getting the crowd hyped up.
Thanks, man. I'm trying to do a few more things with the team. I think we're negotiating because Miles is obviously the mascot. I think we're talking about a possible mini Miles situation. We're looking into that. But yeah, I'd like to do some more stuff with the team. It's my childhood team, and now that I got a little bit of fame, they're letting me basically check off my entire Make-A-Wish. So I got nothing but love for the Denver Broncos, and we'll continue to watch them this year. But you don't want to watch them November 3rd, or at least not during the day. You want to watch my show at Pikes Peak Center, 7 o'clock, Colorado Springs. Now, I don't know if your reach goes all the way out to Denver, but if you're listening in Denver, New Year's Eve, I'll be at the Paramount Theater in Denver. So if you want to ring in the new year with a dwarf, I think that's worth 3 wishes. You could do that as well. You could go get your tickets for that one. Either way, I always like to come into Colorado. People are great. The mindset is great. And thankfully, the football team is getting better.
Brad Williams, my guest. What was a bigger day for you, when the Broncos beat the Panthers in the Super Bowl, and you can be honest with me, or when your daughter was born?
Well, I mean, that's one of the biggest crocs everyone tells you, like, oh, the day my child was born was the best day of my life. No, it wasn't. that was not a great day. I mean, yes, I was joyous and I felt a rush of love that I've never felt in my life. But also, it's a stressful day. You're sitting in a hospital. The person who I loved most in this world before my daughter arrived, my wife, she's on an operating table, getting operated on. She's in pain. She's going through it, and I'm trying to be there for her. There's a strange man splitting open my wife right in front of me. Like, it's not the best day. Anyone who says that's the greatest day of my life has had some pretty bad days. No, obviously, when the Broncos beat the Panthers in the Super Bowl, that was a better day. I was in my apartment. I was getting drunk. I had a lot of good food. I had a lot of friends around me. There was a lot of dancing. It was a celebratory situation. I mean, maybe back in the 50s when your kid was born, it was the best day of your life as a man, because you got to sit out in the lobby and just pass out cigars and have brandy. And then, 5 minutes after she gave birth, you kind of look at your wife and be like, all right, get to momming. But no, that's not how it is anymore. Dads are more involved, thank God. And dads are doing more. At least I'm trying to be that kind of dad. So no, the better day of my life was when the Broncos won the Super Bowl. Now, that doesn't mean that my daughter hasn't brought me more joy than the Broncos have, because that's absolutely true. But yeah, that day in particular, no, I will take Broncos winning the Super Bowl over the day my daughter was born any day.
But the big question is, how much material has she given you over the past few years?
Oh, if you're a parent and you come to my show at the Pikes Peak Center November 3rd or at the Paramount Theater in Denver December 31st, and you will relate to a lot of the material that I'm spitting out, because yes, my daughter does provide a lot of material, thank goodness. And it's nice because in that way, she's contributing to the family business. She's not getting a job. She's not bringing an income in another way. But if she gives me material, I can go out and earn the money. So I'm happy in that sense. No, you'll get a lot of parent stuff. You'll get a lot of stuff about my personal life. Thankfully, it's really easy to write jokes as a dwarf comedian. I'm not a good joke writer, but here's how I write them. Step 1, be a dwarf. Step 2, wait. And then just funny stuff will happen to you. Like, you'll get put up at a Jumbotron at a Broncos game, and things will go from there.
That's awesome. Brad Williams, my guest again, November 3rd. You could see him. Actually, it would work out because the Broncos play in the early window on that day. They play in Baltimore. So you would be able to watch the Bronco game and still have time to head to the Pikes Peak Center. So even if you're a diehard Broncos fan in the middle of this, now, as Brad mentioned, they would be in the playoffs if the season ended today. You could do both, and it would be a great Sunday for you if you're a Denver Broncos fan. And then don't forget about New Year's Eve up at the Paramount. One night or even both nights, and an occasional appearance on the Jumbotron and Empower Field, not enough. So what have you got in the works right now?
Oh, man. We just shot a new special. So my most recent special is called Starfish. It's on YouTube. It's got over 2.5 million views. It's doing great. But we just shot a new special, and we'll be putting that out sometime in probably early 2025. Very, very excited about that. So yeah, that's the main thing, and just to keep at it, just to keep touring, and keep writing new jokes and keep bringing them to the masses, and that's what I'll be excited to do. November 3rd at the Pikes Peak Center, and December 31st at the Paramount Theater.
And we love you for bringing all this content to us, Brad. Really appreciate it. Tour 24 with Brad Williams, Pikes Peak Center, November 3rd. Get your tickets, pikespeakcenter.com. In the meantime, BradWilliamsComedy.com. When we promoted that you were going to be on, at Brad Williams Comic on Instagram, at Funny Brad on X as well, if you want to give him a follow, which I highly recommend. You could talk Broncos with him. I'm sure he would have the time for you to do that. Brad,
darn right I would.
Yeah.
I will talk Broncos with me, whether it be positive, negative, whether you want to vent your frustrations, whether you have Javonte Williams on your fantasy team, and last week gave you some hope against the Saints, you're like, wait, so I shouldn't drop him? Yeah, talk to me. We'll have a good time.
Brad, appreciate you, bud. Can't wait to see you out here in Colorado Springs in a couple weeks.
All right, sounds great. Thanks, man.
Yeah, my pleasure. Brad Williams, he's the best. Really funny. And you have seen him a few times at those Broncos games. In fact, he and Jake Plummer did something together in the offseason. I think it was this summer. He and Jake Plummer were hanging out at Empower Field. How about that? We hear, and I know I'm one of these people. I live in Colorado my whole life, and I'm a fan of another team, but we're so used to when anybody has California ties, it's like, oh, you're more Dodger fan. No, he's a Bronco fan that grew up in Southern California. So, Broncos country. He's one of the good ones. Yeah, really funny. So when I got him on the show, watched a lot of this stuff that I hadn't seen him on, that movie Mascots that he's on and stuff. Really funny stuff. So definitely check it out. BradWilliamsComedy.com, and make sure you get your tickets at the Pikes Peak Center November 3rd at 7:00. So that's good. Had him, TJ Miller, a few weeks ago. It's good getting these comedians on the show to talk a little bit about what they're doing. And hey, if they could talk sports, all the better. So BradWilliamsComedy.com is where you go for all things Brad Williams. Paul texting in. If you don't believe me, believe Paul. Paul never lies. Text in. All listeners need to go see Brad. He is freaking funny. Co-signed. So where are we at here? Top of the hour, we'll get into the Denver Broncos. And I was asked something last night by Jessica Mendoza on KKTV 11 News that I've thought more about since. And it's regarding the trade deadline and any potential targets of the Denver Broncos. Get into that at the top of the hour. Tonight begins the NBA season, and it will be without the Denver Nuggets. So obviously around here, there isn't quite as much oomph for the start of the season. And even then for Thursday, I mean, be honest, with everything that's going on right now, we got the Avs with their goaltending issues. We got the Broncos. If the season ended today, everything Broncos related. I don't know if the beginning of this Nuggets season is going to be met with the same fanfare of the last couple, but certainly on Thursday, it'll pick up a little bit. As far as tonight goes, it's two of the three things that I'm most looking out for this regular season that doesn't have to do with the Denver Nuggets. So much of my NBA thoughts are directed Christian Brown taking over for KCP and Russell Westbrook and Jamal Murray. And I think in a lot of ways, the Denver Nuggets are one of the more intriguing teams in the NBA. When you really stack up all of their storylines, I think they are one of the more interesting teams in the NBA. There are a few non-Nuggets things that I'm intrigued by. A lot of this stuff is obviously postseason. Like anything Boston Celtics, it's like it's about the postseason. Them repeating doesn't have to really do with the 82 games unless they suffer a major injury. But two of the non-Nuggets storylines that I'm most interested in this season will begin tonight. One is what's going on in New York. I'm very interested to see how it all comes together with Karl Anthony Towns. I think it was a great move. Now, the Celtics are still the Celtics, and normally those big splashy moves don't really materialize in year one in terms of winning a championship. But make no mistake about it, I think the Knicks have put themselves in contention for a title with just their natural evolution and now adding Karl Anthony Towns to the mix. I think they can contend for a title. It may not be this year. I would almost look over to Milwaukee, who did something similar last year, right? Bringing in Damian Lillard. It didn't really work as well as you would think. Year one, I would expect the Bucks to be much better in year two and to potentially challenge Boston. The problem is that Boston is really good. I don't know if anybody can knock off Boston in the East. But if I were looking for the most likely team to knock them out, I actually kind of look more Milwaukee's direction than the Knicks. Because I've seen it before, these big, splashy acquisitions. It's not to say they're not good. It just, for it to, you to get a guy and immediately, I mean, think of Peyton Manning with the Broncos. Immediately that worked. Right? They flipped a switch. They were a championship team right away, but they didn't go to a Super Bowl. They were a contender, but they didn't go immediately. They still had to go through some tribulations before they got there. But the Knicks have opened a championship window. But I am curious to see that team together tonight. And then in the late game, it's not so much Minnesota, because Minnesota, I know, is now not quite as formidable of a matchup against Denver as they were a year ago. They're just not. But that doesn't mean the Timberwolves are going to fall off. Julius Randle's a good player. He's just not as good of a matchup for Nikola Jokic to help Rudy Gobert as Karl Anthony Towns was. And we know when we get into the postseason, it's more about matchups than just the most talented team. But the Timberwolves are still going to win a ton of games. They're still going to be one of the top seeds in the West. So I know it's going to work. I just don't know that it'll work as well against Denver. It's the other side of that game that I'm more intrigued with. And no, it's not Bronny and LeBron. And we're going to get that tonight. My prediction is LeBron will sub out in the first quarter. When he comes back in late in the first quarter, it will be he and Bronny. So it can be announced, both of them coming in. The Griffeys, senior and junior, are in the house. They'll have that moment. They'll play together for till the end of the first quarter, and then we may not see Bronny again. And I don't just mean for the game. I mean like ever. Like they just might send Bronny to Siberia and be like, okay, we got it done. Now go away. But that's how I expect it to play out tonight. But that's not the storyline that's most interesting to me with the Lakers. It's JJ Redick and LeBron. That's what's interesting. You know, JJ Redick has not, and I like JJ Redick as an analyst. I do. I thought he was really sharp. I enjoyed his content. Like, this is not me necessarily disparaging him. He's pretty arrogant. And he hasn't toned that down as far as I can tell yet with the media. And it will be interesting to see how long that keeps up if the Lakers struggle. And how that dynamic plays itself out between Redick and LeBron if things do go right. But I'm trying to figure out what's the bar here for the Lakers. Like Darvin Ham, you said wasn't good enough. right? It wasn't we need to change a voice. The talking point coming out of LA was Darvin Ham is not good at his job. Okay, two things that he has done in the last 2 years. Gone to the Western Conference Finals and won the in-season tournament. And scoff all you want at the in-season tournament. The Lakers clearly cared that they won that. It's an accomplishment to them. So you have the Western Conference Final appearance and you have the in-season tournament title that you won. Doesn't JJ Redick have to do those things? Right? I mean, at least the in-season tournament, don't they have to try and defend that? We're not to the future of the Lakers, and I think JJ Redick might be a good coach in the future, but right now you have LeBron, you have Anthony Davis, you got to do stuff now. And the guy that you said wasn't good enough, he's in the last 2 years won the in-season tournament and gone to the Western Conference Finals. Is that not the bar for JJ Redick? Does he not have to do those things in order for this to be looked at as the right move by the LA Lakers? I mean, I know why they made the move, right? We all know why they made the move, but they tried to sell us on the idea that this is the right man for the job, not just the right man to placate LeBron James. Okay, this is what Darvin Ham did. Now you have to do that. And if you don't, then you failed, right? I mean, it's as simple as that. So outside of the Denver Nuggets, the new look Knicks and the dynamic between JJ Redick and LeBron and maybe it's not even LeBron necessarily, it's just JJ Redick in LA and then add all that comes along with it, including LeBron James. But tonight will be more about Bronny and LeBron and him playing on the court for the same time, which will be a cool moment, right? I know I've been critical of it. It will be a neat thing to see. But then Bronny needs to go away because it doesn't help. It's not helping him. It's not helping LeBron. It's not helping the Lakers. So have your moment. It will be nice. Game 1 of 82. That's fine. But then the real Laker business begins, which is, all right, JJ Redick, show that you're more than just Bronny's or Bron's podcast buddy, that you can actually coach, because you got to do it in year 1. 719-247-1313. Coming up next, if the season ended today, the Denver Broncos would be in the postseason. One of my least favorite things to say when it comes to sports, but it's true. Season does not end today. So what do the Broncos need? Do they have it in-house or do they have to go elsewhere? That's next here on Extra Sports 1300. Welcome in Drive Time Sports. Ryan Kaufman with you. Reminder, you can watch the show live on a daily basis if you follow us on social media at Extra Sports. That's XTRA Sports 1300. Facebook, Instagram, X, and YouTube. Was going to talk Broncos and the trade deadline and things like that, and I'll get to that. But this is some significant news regarding their game this week. And I did not see this until just now. I had somebody text me this. So this is breaking news. Andy Dalton was involved in a car accident with his family today. This from Jonathan Jones of CBS Sports. Team spokesman confirms this to the NFL on CBS. Dalton, his wife, 3 kids, and dog were in the car. Thankfully, no one from Dalton's car was transported by emergency medical personnel. So, and then Jones added, Dalton is being evaluated by Panthers medical personnel, and the team has no further details at this time. Wow. So, obviously, setting aside football, that's great news. Because you start to read these reports, and it's not that Jonathan Jones is trying to do clickbait or anything like that. It's just, but you read the first sentence, and you're like, him and his family were involved in a car accident, and you're like, oh my goodness. So, the good news is that seems like nobody was seriously injured. So that's the best news. And that's the news that matters. But now there's the other part of this, right? Because just because you didn't have to go to the ER doesn't mean you're going to be fit to play a football game on Sunday. And despite being benched last weekend, Dave Canales said Andy Dalton's our starter. So it was going to be Andy Dalton against the Denver Broncos on Sunday. And barring some further reporting, which now this rises to one of the biggest stories in the NFL, even though Carolina is going nowhere and their game against Denver is not necessarily one of the high-profile games this week, the immediacy of it. So I got to imagine a lot of news breakers are all over this story, and we may be able to find out something else here as we progress through the program. But it's possible Andy Dalton plays, right? That he suffered no injuries of any kind, and he's on track to be the Carolina Panthers quarterback. But if not, now all of a sudden you're talking about Bryce Young taking back over as the starter. And you can set aside all the talk about whether the Panthers did Bryce Young wrong or he's just not that good or whatever the case may be. As much as the Panthers have struggled since, obviously, given what you just saw from the Denver Broncos defense against the New Orleans Saints and a rookie quarterback in Spencer Rattler, you would feel even more confident in the Denver Broncos' chances of being the Carolina Panthers if Bryce Young were the quarterback as opposed to Andy Dalton. But this is not a completely flipping the perception of Sunday's game. Whether it's Andy Dalton, whether it's Bryce Young, or whether Cam Newton comes out of retirement to play for the Carolina Panthers, this is a game the Broncos must win. Like, there is no, and should win regardless. Like, this is a non-negotiable. This is not, after what happened on Thursday, right? Immediately getting the taste out of the Chargers loss out of their collective mouths. Now you look at it and beat the Jets, beat the Raiders. Now they beat the Saints. Playoffs started today. Broncos would be in. All of this kind of stuff. You cannot let that fall by the wayside and go into the Charger game the way you went in to the Carolina game. Because I do think, and I was talking about all week leading up to the Charger game, that I thought that the Broncos would look a little like Tampa Bay did when Denver got down there. Feeling themselves a little bit, riding a little bit high, maybe not dealing with prosperity that well. Now, Carolina, and we saw with the Chargers just flat out punched the Broncos in the mouth, and the Broncos never recovered. Like, Chargers took control of that game immediately and never let go. Well, they did let go when the game was well in hand, and that's why you saw Bo Nix do some things near the end of that game. But when the game was still in the balance, the Chargers were in complete command. The Panthers don't have that ability, even if the Broncos fall behind early for some reason. You still, I think, would have confidence that they can come back. Because the Panthers aren't as good as the Chargers. Even with what you saw last night against Arizona, trust me, Chargers still better than the Carolina Panthers. But maybe you take it one step further and you don't just say, well, the Broncos can't be overconfident. They need to take care of business and win. It's a tough standard to hold a team to, but how much different than the New Orleans game should this be? Right? I feel like this is a game for the Denver Broncos where they can flex a little bit, like they did against New Orleans. And we know that New Orleans and Carolina aren't any good. But this is what, playoff contending teams do. They dominate teams like this. So even though I don't begrudge anybody to kind of chalk this down as a W and start thinking about what the Broncos are going to do to navigate the 2-game road trip to Baltimore and Kansas City, I think there's some style points that this team can and should earn on Sunday, regardless of who the quarterback of the Panthers are, especially if Bryce Young is going to be the quarterback. And you would think that the Broncos defense would be able to terrorize him much to the same extent they did Spencer Rattler. And, oh, by the way, there's a decent chance Pat Surtain's going to play. And, oh, by the way, you've had now extra rest, that mini bye. You're at home. Given what you saw against New Orleans, shouldn't you expect a similar performance? I think it's reasonable. Ultimately, you get the win. That's the most important thing, because you are heading into 2 extremely difficult games and you are facing the realistic possibility that you are at 5-5 after these next 3 games, which then you start looking at the math. And I did this today, looking through the schedule. And you could, if the Broncos win this week and lose the next 2 weeks, which I think is reasonable. And yes, I will say that the Baltimore game looks much more difficult than the Kansas City game. But Kansas City is unbeaten It is Arrowhead. So that's not a game you would expect the Denver Broncos to win. You drop to 5-5. The way the schedule sets up, if 10 is the magic number to really be in the postseason, I could see this team with 9, potentially with 3 games left at LA, Chargers, not Rams, Bengals, and Chiefs. That's not the easiest end to the schedule, and all 3 of those teams could have something to play for. Now, you may like the math there that they only need to get 1 of those 3. But I think you look at the Cincinnati game, like, could it be Denver or Cincinnati going in the playoffs? It's possible. But that's, down the road here. As far as this Sunday, whether it's Dalton or whether it's Bryce Young, I think this needs to be another statement win from the Denver Broncos. Don't mess around. Don't make it seem like, is maybe this team not quite low overcome. No, just take care of business like you did against New Orleans. That was a very business-like approach to New Orleans, and they just systematically took them apart. I can't find a legitimate reason other than it's hard to do that 2 weeks in a row where I can say that I don't expect the Broncos to do the same thing to Carolina. And I think it's reasonable for you to expect that. It is difficult to do that multiple weeks. Back-to-back weeks look that good. But we're talking about arguably the 2 worst teams in the NFL right now. Forget records, just on paper, with the rash of injuries New Orleans has had, and what Carolina has been all season long, you could argue these are the 2 of the worst teams in the NFL that the Broncos are meeting up in the next 2 weeks. And then the following 2 weeks, arguably 2 of the best teams in the NFL. Style points do matter. This is not, even though a win is important, and that's the bare minimum, these are the type of games where how you win matters. And if it's Andy Dalton or if Bryce Young ends up stepping in and gives you a little bit of, as Air Force hockey coach Frank Serratori would say, a little bit of that stomach acid, you're not going to be feeling great going into games at Baltimore and at Kansas City. To the Broncos, they just want to win. I get that. But to us, style points matter. How you win, how you lose matters. And now with even more uncertainty, at least for the moment, surrounding Carolina. Again, if you did not hear, if you're just joining us, Andy Dalton and his family got into a car accident today. The best news is that none of them had to be taken to an emergency care center. So that's the best news. But if Andy Dalton's a little dinged up, does that open the door for Bryce Young to come back? Regardless, and maybe even more so with the uncertainty, if Andy Dalton's dealing with a little something out of this, and there's some uncertainty that Dave Canales and the Panthers got to figure out, even more so, it should be a game where the Broncos don't look that much different than they did against Carolina. At least than they did against New Orleans, in terms of how much in control they are and how dominant they look. 719-247-1313. Take your thoughts on Broncos Panthers. How much does it change your thought process with this game? If I were to tell you that now Andy Dalton doesn't play, which we don't know. But if he doesn't, and it's Bryce Young, more confident, less confident, same amount? Take your thoughts. 719-247-1313. Coming up next, one of the better receivers in the NFL has now been placed on the trade block. Could the Broncos be a suitor? Tell you next. The breaking news out of the NFL, Andy Dalton and his family were involved in a car accident today. The team told CBS. Now, everybody is okay from the standpoint. None of them had to be rushed to the emergency room, which obviously whenever we talk about these, you don't want to be so callous to only talk about the football side. Important to get out right away that no one had to go to the emergency room, but obviously you take a step past it with relief that the family is okay. Is Andy Dalton going to be right to play football on Sunday? Just got done talking about that. I don't believe it should change too much. And if anything, if it is Bryce Young being thrust back into duty, if my confidence meter is at 98% that the Denver Broncos win, it would probably move to 99. This is just not a game that the Broncos should mess around with, let alone lose. Now, before this news, I was not really keen on the week because I know what's coming down the pike. And it came from Brett, but you're not the first, Brett. But I will read your text. Your extensive coverage of Andy Dalton's car wreck. I've got to think, Ryan, does this have something to do with hair color? So I figured that there would be a few of these comments this week. How am I feeling about taking on the Denver Broncos? Am I worried that I'm going to lose my job to Bryce Young? Like, I expect it. But I'll tell you the last person I expect it from. I get a text last night from my brother. And he sends me a meme that you may have seen if you've been on social media of Andy Dalton looking not pleased with the outcome of the football game he was playing in, and Bryce Young with a smile on his face, and people have memed it and said, when you know that your time is coming again or whatever. I should just pull up the text. It'd be easier to do it. But let's see. Bryce Young's face says it all when you know you're finally getting your job back. The reason why I don't, and he asked if that was me, and why I don't expect to get that from my brother is because he too is of red hair. He has red hair too. Why is he sending me this? And so I sent back, I thought it was you. Like, come on, dude. We're both redheads. Why are you doing this to me? And then, because he knows me in a way not many people do, he said, the scowl is a wry trademark. I am very much known for my resting face. And it's been well publicized in the hallways here at Cumulus Media. People think in meetings and stuff, I am just angry. And it's like, no, this is just the way my face is. I'm not upset. I'm fine. I'm actually in a great mood. I have to go into a whole explanation to convince them of why I'm in a fine mood. And the perceived scowl I have on my face is just my resting face. But he did kind of nail it because that is something that I am known for around here. I'm also known in my family as that. My family thinks I'm always in a grumpy mood, and I'm really not. I'm quite a delightful human being, if I may say so myself. Little socially awkward, but generally fun to be around. But it's just, I got to do something about my face. Like, I used to think I had to do something about my hair to avoid these kind of comparisons, but now I've realized that my resting face, it has become more of an issue with my family and coworkers, and I need to work on that. So I will. With that being said, we have talked at length about what Bo Nix is or is not at this stage of his career. And what he is not is accurate from the pocket, which plays into another problem that the Denver Broncos have had for much of this season. If you have a more inaccurate quarterback, a quarterback that has maybe some trouble fitting the ball into tight windows for completions, you need separation from your receivers. And the Broncos have, for much of this season, not had anyone who can create that separation. And early on in the year, it was this chicken or the egg, right? Is Bo Nix not completing more passes because his receivers aren't getting open? Or is it just that Bo Nix is inaccurate and he should be fitting it into these windows? And it's been a little bit of a discussion. The bottom line is it's both. The Broncos, for much of this season, have not shown the ability to separate in coverage, which is even more paramount when you have an inaccurate quarterback, and even more paramount in today's NFL, where it seems like for the moment, the defenses have the upper hand. Last night's Ravens-Buccaneers game notwithstanding, over the offense. Right? Playing the shell coverage, all that kind of stuff. You need guys to be able to separate in the middle of the field. Anyway, right? Patrick Mahomes is dealing with this. But Bo Nix is also inaccurate. So separation by receivers is even more important. Well, now, look at what we have here. Well, don't look. I'll tell you. Troy Franklin is getting some separation. In fact, Troy Franklin, in a more of a role on Thursday against the New Orleans Saints, actually, in terms of separation, ranks alongside Jalen Waddle and Jamar Chase in that particular category. Now, got to do this sometimes when it comes to the Denver Broncos. Please do not take that as Troy Franklin is as good as Jalen Waddle and Jamar Chase. He is not. Separation is not the only thing that makes a quality wide receiver. Troy Franklin is not better than Jalen Waddle, nor is he better than Jamar Chase, and he may never be as good as either one of them. However, he is providing the one thing that I think Bo Nix needs the most from his receivers. And so now, what you and I think, or I'll say I thought, I'm pretty sure you thought this, but I thought, wow, Troy Franklin, Bo Nix together, that's a great fit. They should work well together. And then Sean Payton poo-pooed the entire idea and poo-pooed it further by not putting Troy Franklin on the field. And they're like, okay, maybe this isn't quite working out. Well, now Troy Franklin, who has surpassed Marvin Mims in the pecking order, it seems. He got twice as many snaps as Marvin Mims. Marvin Mims at this point, who you thought could be the separator in the wide receiver group, is now basically a gadget player. They're lining him up as the halfback in some formations against New Orleans. That's his role. And that's fine. You can have one of those guys, Cordell Patterson, like There have been guys like that. If you can utilize Marvin Mims' speed in that way, go right ahead. But now it's like even more the answer here, at least internally, is Troy Franklin. And you have a game where the Broncos look good all throughout the field. And now you have Troy Franklin who is showing the ability to get separation. And he was already showing that as that famous drop pass now that will live in infamy and go down in Broncos lore, because that's when Bo Nix and Sean Payton got into it on the sideline. Like, we've seen it, but we've only seen it in tiny little chunks. And now he gets 35, 36 snaps, and now we're seeing a little bit more. It's no longer a tiny sample size. So maybe this Oregon connection can work out after all. So looking at what Bo Nix is or is not right now, what he needs is a receiver that can create separation. Because Bo Nix right now is not accurate enough in the pocket with his footwork to be able to deliver the ball in a tight window. And even then, there were some throws. Lucas Kroll, the one to Lucas Kroll on the opening drive comes to mind. Even if Troy Franklin gets separation, Bo Nix might not be able to hit him, but it's a good place to start to at least have a receiver that can create that separation. So certainly someone to watch out for more. And by the way, with Cortland Sutton not getting targeted at all on Thursday, Troy Franklin, maybe that Oregon connection is truly blossoming with the Denver Broncos. That being said, if this team is serious about the postseason and they want to go for it, they want to be all in on the playoffs, there is a move that is possible. Maybe. Certainly makes sense from the Broncos side. I don't know how much the other team is going to be amenable to it. We'll get into that here in just a moment. Drive Time Sports here on Extra Sports 1300. So with the Broncos playing the way they are, with some uncertainty surrounding the Carolina quarterback situation, it may alter the way that you want to bet Sunday's game. Now, I'm not telling you one way or another, but I am telling you that if you want the best experience that I have gotten when it comes to a betting app, it would be Circa Sports Colorado. And that's what they strive to do. Other sports books, they'll throw out all these crazy offers, right? These promos to get you in the door. Well, and then they'll start to recoup some of what they gave you by going minus 115, minus 120 on a lot of their splits. With Circa Sports Colorado, their lines are their promos. They strive to be a minus 110 split. They keep as little money as possible on large market bets like futures and golf tournaments. And their customer service is second to none because, what a novel concept, they have real people supporting this app. The same people at Circa Resort and Casino in Vegas, in that sports book, are also helping you with the app. So if you ever have any issues, and I haven't found any yet, but if you do, just know you got the best customer service available to you with a sports betting app. So no matter how you're going to bet Sunday's game, I would suggest you do it on the Circa Sports Colorado app. Of course, must be 21 or older and present in Colorado to bet. If you have a gambling problem, call 1-800-GAMBLER. You can also text that as well. Every once in a while I do open a window into my day-to-day life. Humanize me is really what I've been told in focus groups. I need to humanize myself a little bit more. So I let on that, my resting face doesn't make me very approachable, and people think I'm always in a bad mood. And of course, I put that out there. I make myself vulnerable, right? It's a good thing, supposedly, to be vulnerable in front of, I thought, friends. And then, of course, get roasted for it. Ryan says Ginger Ninja is always angry. That's kind of an inside thing. I was glossed that many a year ago. And some people around the office call me that. Ginger Ninja. I don't love it. But I already have this reputation of being a grump. I don't want to further perpetuate that. I'm not always angry. Brett says, so what we're all hearing is you need to change your face. It's easy these days. Yes, but it's expensive. Trust me, I've looked into it. I go in and I say, how much for the Ryan Gosling? Like, how much would that cost? It's pricey. But I'll keep working on it best I can at my income level to improve my face. And any constructive criticism that you may have to help me with that, just go ahead and keep it to yourself. Anyway, so we may not be done with wide receivers getting dealt in the National Football League. Of course, we had that flurry last week with Devontae Adams and Amari Cooper going to the AFC East. Now the Rams are openly shopping. They're soliciting other teams. They're robocalling teams and saying, hey, what if I told you could have a former NFL Triple Crown winning receiver who starred in a Super Bowl on your team? And what if I told you all it would take is a second round pick? That's apparently what the Rams are doing with Cooper Kupp, which shouldn't that already be a red flag? If the Rams are indeed calling other teams, shopping Cooper Kupp, don't you have to be a little bit leery of it being exactly what you need? And I'm talking about any team, not just the Broncos. He's texting someone during the break that was asking, we're both, he's a Chiefs fan, so he's asking Chiefs things. I don't think Cooper Kupp's the answer for the Kansas City Chiefs. And I don't think he's the answer for the Denver Broncos. It has shifted to the now for this team. Whether you actually believe that the Denver Broncos are a playoff team or not, you have to acknowledge that we are living in the now with this team. It's not the future. There's also a future. And because of what the now is, the future does look a little bit brighter. But this team is living in the now. We're talking about the now with the Denver Broncos. What can they do this second, this year? What can they do this trade deadline to make them better this year? If you're going to make a move, do you want Cooper Kupp when you're living in the now? Like, I could understand for the future if he's healthy. It's still not a great option given his injury history. If I'm the Denver Broncos and I'm going to make a move, and I don't know why we didn't hear more about them with Amari Cooper, or Brandon Ayuk, it just seemed like that was all either media or fan generated. Never heard anything about the Broncos being interested in any of these guys. But yeah, it would be for the future, but there's also a now here. And it's a credit to the Broncos. It's a credit to Sean Payton. We're talking about the now. It could be dangerous because if things go sideways in the next few weeks, then that's going to be more heat on Sean Payton and more heat on this team. But so far, it's overall a positive thing because they've done better than many people have thought they would. If I'm going to make this kind of a move, whether I'm the Broncos, whether I'm the Chiefs, whether I'm another team that could use a wide receiver, I want a dude that I know I'm going to get for the rest of the year. And I don't know that I'm going to get Cooper Kupp. So T. Higgins, I don't know. Are the Bengals ready to wave the white flag? It doesn't seem like they are. So are they going to ship off T. Higgins? And when I was on KKTV 11 last night with Jessica Mendoza, she asked me about whether the Broncos should be buyers at the deadline. And I said, of course. And if you listen to the show, you know I have long been campaigning for the Denver Broncos to go out and get a veteran, proven wide receiver to help with the development of Bo Nix. And now we've added this other wrinkle of, hey, the Broncos are in this playoff race thing right now, albeit, 7 weeks in, but they're in that conversation. So yes, of course they should be. And she brought up tight end. And Brett, I know that you've thrown that out on multiple occasions when this discussion has come up, that you say they need a tight end. And I would agree with you. My big thing has always been, who are the capable pass catching tight ends that are available? Right? Like, where are they? There's not a lot of them. The market is not huge with these guys. So I say dream scenario, Kyle Pitts, right? Doesn't seem like Atlanta still knows how to use this guy. They're now just figuring out how to use Bijan Robinson. Now, Atlanta dropped a game and you're like, I don't know if this team is going to be a playoff team. And then the Bucs get absolutely housed and you're like, okay, well, maybe Atlanta's going to stick in. But now thinking about what's going on in Cleveland, it will be very interesting to see what Cleveland does moving forward. They already unloaded Amari Cooper. The injury to Deshaun Watson, and you could make an argument that even if Deshaun Watson was healthy, that the Browns may need to look in this direction because they weren't winning a lot of games. Could the Browns all of a sudden have a fire sale? I've heard things that they're not even guaranteed to go with Jameis Winston. Now, I haven't checked today to see if that's still the case, but I'm just like, well, they're going to go to Jameis Winston, and now, no, DTR, Dorian Thompson-Robinson might be the guy. Well, that's a young quarterback. That might be kind of punting on the year, no? And you could argue their season is over anyway, but I'm curious what the Browns do. because you have this albatross that is Deshaun Watson's contract. Before the injury, after the injury, same. Is this a team that immediately goes into rebuild mode? And with all these teams seemingly wanting to find players to bolster, you got Detroit that may be looking for a pass rusher. Myles Garrett's not going anywhere, but maybe the Browns have a lesser pass rusher that they can offer up. The Lions need a pass rusher, and the Chiefs need a receiver, and the Broncos need somebody to help out Bo Nix, a weapon of some sort at some position. All these teams out there. What about David Njoku? His contract is going to balloon after this season. I know you can always restructure, but as it sits right now, his contract is going to go from $9 to $22 million. The offensive line in Cleveland, which I think they want to keep intact if they can help it. Also, a lot of them are due significant pay increases, and you have the Deshaun Watson contract. Could the Browns, realizing and coming to grips with the idea that there's not a path forward until they get out from under the Deshaun Watson contract, do they look to offload other assets to try and rebuild this team? I don't put out of the realm of possibility. I still don't know how they're going to extricate themselves from Deshaun Watson's contract. But it would not surprise me if the Browns are in a position to grab Shedeur Sanders, that they go for it. But then the other part of me says, well, what would be best for Shedeur? David Njoku. Their wide receiver core right now, without Amari Cooper, their best wide receiver arguably is Jerry Jeudy. Their wide receiving core is a little thin. You want to take out your best weapon? He just had I believe, fantasy-wise, David Njoku had the second best fantasy day for any tight end this season. Is he a guy that Cleveland's going to want to part with? Whether they're going to rebuild or whether they're not. But I will say this, because I can't worry about the Cleveland side of it. All of a sudden, there's your tight end. There's your tight end in a situation where you can at least reasonably, and I dislike some of these discussions because it gets out of control. Right? And then some targets of fans are completely unrealistic. And I don't want to, I want to tether this show to reality in a way. Right? Well, David Njoku, given what has happened with the Cleveland Browns, isn't that far-fetched. Is it unlikely? Yeah. But if you want to put together a wish list, forget T. Higgins. Forget Cooper Kupp. David Njoku would be perfect for the Denver Broncos. Sean Payton has yet to name a joker. It's like the seat has stayed open this entire time, and he hasn't bothered to name anyone to that position because no one is good enough. Tight ends aren't, and miss me with the Lucas Kroll stuff. Okay, he's not that dude either, but he might be the best of the bunch. All of a sudden, you get David Njoku. That's your joker. That's a tight end, and a tight end that gets separation. To take you back to our earlier segment about Troy Franklin creating separation, David Njoku separates. That's what Bo Nix needs. So through some circumstances that have happened, in the last few days, all of a sudden getting someone like David Njoku, well, that's got to be the dream if you're a Denver Broncos fan. But I just wonder, are the Broncos thinking that way? It has just been so quiet. Is this a lesson they learned from the Aaron Rodgers fiasco? Like, we really need to keep it very tight to the chest what we want to do. So is this one of those teams that's really sneaky about stuff? Or are they legitimately not interested in giving up a first or second day pick on one of these receivers? But I think sometimes fans just want a team to make a move. Right? You got to make a move to signal to me that you're going for it. Well, a move like David Njoku would certainly signal that to fans, but also from a practical standpoint. And that's what I keep going back to with Amari Cooper and Brandon Ayuk. Like, there's a practical football reason for bringing in one of these guys. Bo Nix at some point, and Troy Franklin's been a nice story over the past week, and I want to see more of Troy Franklin. You got to get one. You've seen this time and time again. Look at what Jaden Daniels is doing with Terry McLaurin. You need A.J. Brown with Jalen Hurts, Josh Allen with Stephon Diggs. They're going to have to find one of these guys sooner rather than later if they want Bo Nix to continue his development. So why not now? Because they're just going to go into April, and what are we all going to put at the top of their wish list? Well, they got to get a receiver or a tight end. They got to get a weapon for Bo Nix. Well, it seems like there are a few that have been out there. And the Broncos are radio silence on all of these guys. Maybe someone like David Njoku is enough for the Broncos to move a little bit on this. See, week and a half away from the trade deadline. 719-247-1313. We'll hit the three stories that are driving the show coming up next. Hello there. Welcome in Drive Time Sports. Pleasure to have you. Ryan Kaufman with you. Appreciate you listening, whether it's on your radio, online at extrasports1300.com, or you've downloaded the new Extra Sports 1300 app, sponsored by Diversus Health, mental health and well-being for all. And of course, you can watch the show live on a daily basis on our social media platforms at XTRA Sports 1300. Giving you the lay of the land for the evening. This week's edition of the Frank Serratori Show is coming up at the top of the hour. How about the weekend for the Falcons? Sweep of Lindenwood in come-from-behind fashion in both games. And now they start conference play. So those two wins against Lindenwood just in time. And then on the other side, they'll have a CC for 2 games. So very important this past weekend for Air Force to get on the board and to have a good weekend. And they did. And you'll hear Frank Serratori talking about it at 6. And then immediately when that is done at 7, we will be joining tonight's Avs-Kraken matchup. Every single NHL team is in action tonight, which I think is fun, but it does make it very difficult when you obviously care more about one team. You know, like I kind of want to lock in that, but I got the Caps and Flyers on. That's the first game of the night. And every other team in action, Avs and Kraken. So that'll be right after the Frank Serratori Show. So hockey fans, stick here. In the meantime, no hockey stories for what's driving the show today. But there are significant stories that are driving the show. All right, story number 1, Mr. Nugget will be Mr. Nugget for a while. Aaron Gordon inking a 4-year, $133 million extension just before the buzzer sounded. Teams and players that wanted to get extensions done had to do so before the season started. Aaron Gordon and the Nuggets got it done. And in an offseason that has been so much about who should be extended and who should not be extended, this is one that is a no-brainer. Aaron Gordon, his addition made this team a championship team. Right? They weren't. Aaron Gordon got there, missing piece, everything fit into place. Nuggets go on to win a title. He does 2 of the most important things that you can possibly do as a basketball player, rebound and defend. And he does both like a madman. And all the while, he doesn't probably get the respect that he deserves. He is an integral part to the success of the Denver Nuggets. And it's almost like watching when the playoffs roll around. These commentators for TNT or ESPN like bringing up Aaron Gordon like he's some kind of a revelation. You watch this team nightly. You know how important Aaron Gordon is. And by the way, he's available. So this is not like Porter's extension. This is not like KCP's lack of one. And it's not like Jamal Murray's. This dude is available. This dude does things that are absolutely vital to championship success. And he's one of the most beloved members of this Nuggets team, probably second to only Nikola Jokic. And there's a reason why all was quiet on this front. It was always going to get done. And I was at a Nuggets media day, and I got the sense that it was a mere formality that this deal was going to get done. Kentavious Caldwell-Pope is a different animal. They got Christian Brown. We can argue And we probably will coming up in the next couple of days on whether Christian Brown is going to be able to be as effective as Kentavious Caldwell-Pope. But there is no debate. There is no young player on the come up that will replace Aaron Gordon. He's that dude. You need him in that position. He fits so well with Nikola Jokic, and he's able to allow the starting five, which has been arguably the best in the NBA for a couple of years now, allows all these other guys to do what they do best because of the things he does well. So this is obvious. This is a no-brainer. And even then, Aaron Gordon still doing the Nuggets a bit of a solid, as his salary will stay at this level for this year, next year as well, before it starts to escalate. He'll make his money up on the back end. He's not doing this as a part of his philanthropic works, but he's giving the Nuggets a chance to maximize the main part of their championship window, which was the year they won, last year, this year, next year. After that, there are a lot of other questions that are going to pop up with this basketball team, and we'll get to those then. But right now, Aaron Gordon locked up along with Porter, along with Murray, along with Jokic. The core of this Nuggets team is intact for the foreseeable future. Story number 2, a potential impact on Sunday's game between the Broncos and the Carolina Panthers. Panthers starting quarterback Andy Dalton was involved in a car accident today with his family. Now, the best news is that no one had to be taken to a hospital by emergency personnel. So that is great, and that is obviously the most important thing. But Andy Dalton could be okay from that standpoint, but not be fit or healthy enough to face the Denver Broncos on Sunday. Could Bryce Young slide back into the role that he was demoted from? That remains to be seen. I will say that the Broncos should very much make Bryce Young look like they made Spencer Rattler look the other night. Yes, the Broncos' chances are better to beat Carolina with Bryce Young as the quarterback as opposed to Andy Dalton. Right? The Carolina Panthers even made that known. When they promoted Andy Dalton, he gives us a better chance to win. I agree with that. So yes, the Broncos' chances of winning are greater with Bryce Young being thrust back into duty than Andy Dalton back there. However, this is one of those weeks and one of those opponents where really it should not matter. If we're going to seriously continue to discuss the Denver Broncos as a potential playoff team, this is a game that it should not matter who the quarterback is. As long as he is currently employed by the Carolina Panthers, the Denver Broncos should not only win this game, it should look quite similar to the New Orleans game. These are games where you pick up style points. And with two very difficult games on the horizon for the Denver Broncos after this, regardless of whether it's Andy Dalton or Bryce Young, this team needs to roll Carolina. Their chances of rolling Carolina are just a little bit better if it's Bryce Young instead of Andy Dalton starting at quarterback. Now we'll see what the prognosis is for Andy Dalton, and I'm sure that Sean Payton will be asked tomorrow, or is tomorrow coordinator day? Whether it's Payton or Vance Joseph, somebody will be asked about preparing for both quarterbacks, and we'll see what they have to say. But the best news, Andy Dalton and his family are okay. No one had to be sent to the emergency room, but we'll see if Andy Dalton's okay to play on Sunday or whether Bryce Young will end up being the starting quarterback going up against the Denver Broncos defense, the vaunted Broncos defense coming up on Sunday. And story number 3, also out of the National Football League, that Super Bowl hero, NFL Triple Crown winning receiver, which I didn't even know that was a thing until Cooper Kupp did it, is now being shopped by the Rams. The reported asking price, a second-round pick, and the Rams are going to sweeten the pot by retaining much of his salary. Already, and I could put this through the lens of the Denver Broncos or any team looking to get a wide receiver that is not the Jets, although who knows, the Jets might be after another wide receiver because they seem to think that will fix everything. But then Buffalo, that already made moves for receivers, if your team is looking for a receiver, I would exhaust other options before Cooper Kupp. I know that the Rams are getting ready to probably rebuild post Matthew Stafford. But if I'm a team that needs a wide receiver, I want somebody that I can have at least the confidence that he will make it through the rest of the season, that I will have him. Whether I'm the Chiefs and I'm looking to win a Super Bowl, or I'm the Denver Broncos, I'm looking to make the playoffs, I want the guy I acquire at the trade deadline to be available to me. And I don't think Cooper Kupp's injuries are like Devontae Adams made up injuries that are suddenly going to heal. Like, this dude has been banged up for a long time. I don't think he may be the best option on the. Would you rather have injured Cooper Kupp or healthy Mike Williams? I think that's really the debate. I think I want a guy that's available. So I would look elsewhere. But the talent is undeniable. And if you're looking to make more of a long-term play, how many wide receivers are going to hit the open market this offseason? This may be your chance. But I would exhaust other options when it comes to adding a pass-catching weapon before I go to Cooper Kupp. But he's out there. Rams are robo-dialing teams looking for a suitor. Take your thoughts on the 3 stories that are driving the show, 719-247-1313. Want to tell you, if you're often feeling tired, lacking motivation and drive, gaining weight, or noticing a loss in muscle mass, and you might be blaming yourself, I'm here to tell you, you might be wrong in doing that. It may be low testosterone, which is natural, which is out of your control. It just happens. But I'm also here to tell you that you need to get your levels checked at Low T Center. They make it easy to do so. They have an on-site lab, so simple blood test, 25 minutes later, you get your results back. And if it is low testosterone that's causing some of these issues, just know you're in the right place to get treated. They specialize in this. They have a variety of treatment options, including physician-monitored self-inject treatments that ship directly to your home. But the first step to get back to your best is to go to lowtcenter.com to book your appointment today. Get those levels checked. lowtcenter.com. Low T Center, reinventing men's healthcare. Colorado Buffaloes getting ready to take on Cincinnati. And with a win this Saturday, they will be bowl eligible for the first time in a while. Feels like a while. But given how this team has played 2 of the last 3 weeks, and given the fact that they were moments away from also beating Kansas State, bowl eligibility now is kind of secondary. Because the conversation is, well, it's not, I mean, they're not going to stop at 6. So how many above this? It's almost like bowl eligibility is a mere formality. And in many ways, I think it is. I think they get this done on Saturday. And then how many more games can they win? And then, of course, you also have the Heisman campaign of Travis Hunter, which has hit a bit of a speed bump as of late. Deion Sanders, meeting with the media today, said that he expects Travis Hunter to have a larger role on Saturday against Cincinnati. He's feeling better, feeling healthier. And so maybe we see more of Travis Hunter. But if you follow the odds and you look at Vegas as some sort of an indicator to who's going to win what, just these last couple of games with Travis Hunter being hurt, you see the impact. It was just a couple of weeks ago that Travis Hunter was right there. Some books had him the favorite, some had him second, but he was right there. And now he's in some places, are just looking at this, plus 1,500 behind Dylan Gabriel, and a big underdog, if you will, to Dylan Gabriel. Travis Hunter plus 1,500, Dylan Gabriel plus 350, Ashton Genty plus 200, and Cam Ward plus 200. And it goes back to what I'm saying. The quarterback bias when it comes to football is real. And Dylan Gabriel's the example of this. Cam Ward's been there for a while. Dylan Gabriel has now really entered the chat, so to speak, when it comes to the Heisman because of the Ohio State game. But we will look to find any quarterback we can. And we were just having this conversation last week when it comes to the NFL MVP. We will exhaust every quarterback option before we get to someone who plays another position. And you are seeing with Travis Hunter in just a couple of games, all of a sudden fall way behind in the Heisman race. It's so easy to ignore even someone like Travis Hunter. And I've been saying this all throughout the year. There's got to be a Nikola Jokic for MVP level effort here to get Travis Hunter the MVP or the Heisman Trophy, even with how amazing it is, what he does. It still requires constant barrage of Travis Hunter should win the Heisman. Here's why. Travis Hunter. You know who should win the Heisman? Travis Hunter. It's really a campaign. But it's an awareness campaign. It's not like the presidential campaign where everyone's already decided. Who's undecided at this point? Like, we know, but at least you know who your choices are, right? You're going to go with him or you're going to go with her. That's pretty much the choice. with the Heisman, and when it comes to Travis Hunter, there's an awareness campaign. And right now, he's starting to lose that a little bit. He's starting to slip because he hasn't played. And meanwhile, he has somebody that a lot of, I don't want to say quarterback haters, but people that are saying, hey, we got to look outside of the quarterback position for some of these awards, are spending a lot of their energy on Ashton Genty. It's a lot of the same people. I know Buffs fans are decidedly one way, but national talking heads, people like that, are kind of going, all right, if I'm going to back up a non-quarterback to win the Heisman, I'm going to prop up Ashton Genty. And a lot of the heat is around Ashton Genty right now. And he's been phenomenal. Phenomenal. What I'll say, though, right now, as long as Travis Hunter is back healthy and on the field, Travis Hunter will finish above Ashton Genty in the Heisman voting. The margin for error, you think it's a margin for error, I don't know is the way I want to put it, but the margin to be talked about in serious consideration of the Heisman is so thin with Travis Hunter, it is even thinner when it comes to Ashton Genty because where he plays. I'm telling you, the conference, the school, it's that. All it takes is one SEC team of note, whether it's Georgia or Alabama. How about Alabama this weekend? Everyone's down on them. People are out. What if Jaden Milroe goes crazy against Missouri? What if Carson Beck finally stars in one of these games for Georgia? I'm glad Ashton Genty's in the conversation. He deserves to be. He's not playing at where Jaleel McLaughlin played at Youngstown State and putting up these numbers. Yeah, he's not in the SEC. But he's in a middle ground that he deserves to be in the conversation. But Travis Hunter deserves to be in that conversation as well. I think the margin is thinner when it comes to Ashton Genty. Like one game where he's not just unbelievable, and watch Genty's odds get longer and longer and longer and longer. They're just waiting. That's just how good Ashton Genty has been. Is that every week you can't look at the box score and go, Ashton Genty kind of had an off day today. He hasn't had an off day. He's been healthy. He's been on the entire season. And that's what it takes. And you're seeing that with Travis Hunter. Just a game or two, and they're moving him back down. But a chance for Travis to get back on the field, have an impact, as now the Buffs really are back in the national conversation. After beating UCF, taking Kansas State down to the wire, and then beating Arizona the way they did. And I expect them to beat Cincinnati. Interesting note, while we're talking about odds. CU is now favored in all of their remaining games. Against Cincinnati, in Lubbock, against Oklahoma State, Kansas, all of them. They are favored to win. Just found that interesting on how things have opened up for CU. Although it does not look like Iowa State and BYU are going to lose ever, especially BYU. If they didn't lose that game against Oklahoma State, I don't know that BYU's losing between now and the Big 12 title game. They seem like Destiny is smiling upon BYU. That was a wild game on Friday. And then Iowa State's just bludgeoning teams. 719-24-7, 13-13. Even with the last two games going the way they would you still have Travis Hunter if you were filling out a Heisman ballot? I think I think Genty has pulled ahead of him. It's not Travis Hunter's fault, and it doesn't take much for Hunter to flip that back the other way, and it could be as soon as Saturday. But that's how good Ashton Genty has been. And Cam Ward's in that conversation, and I'm not. Would Dylan Gabriel be the fourth guy invited to New York? Maybe, but watch Jalen Milroe have a great game on Saturday against Missouri and jump back over Dylan Gabriel. But we're always looking for a quarterback. We can't help it. 719-24-7, 13-13. Coming up next, while we wait for the Denver Nuggets to open up their season, other teams will get underway tonight and tomorrow. And one of those teams that is playing tomorrow is already facing an uphill climb when it comes to their health and their health of one particular very large human being. The NBA tips off tonight with the Knicks and Celtics. It is, despite what you may be hearing, it is the Celtics night, not the Knicks night, as the Celtics will have their ring ceremony. That's actually should be getting underway right now. And then later tonight, will Bronny play or not? I think the best thing would just be for them to do it tonight. Ken Griffey Jr. and Ken Griffey Sr. in the house. Get it done tonight, and then we don't have... If they drag this on, then they're just... People are going to turn on them more than they already are over this. So just do the thing tonight. It will be fine. We'll all remark how cool it is, and then we can move on with the rest of our NBA lives. But then tomorrow night, the Philadelphia 76ers will be tipping off their season. And already, you know, it's kind of hard, if you're being honest, to sap excitement out of your fan base for opening night. It's hard. You have to have a really difficult offseason. And it's even harder to do it when you actually did some interesting things this offseason. But that is where the Sixers are. Sixers add Paul George. Now it's Maxey, it's George, it's Embiid. On paper, talent-wise, best roster the Sixers have had in years. And now neither Paul George nor Joel Embiid will play tomorrow night. Embiid won't be there for a week. This on the heels of him saying he's probably not going to play back-to-backs this season. This is it for Joel Embiid. This is it. And I'm not talking about one of the best three players in the world, arguably better than Nikola Jokic. Anybody that knows what they're talking about has already finished that debate, and it is no debate. It is Jokic over Embiid. However, this is the last stand for Joel Embiid being the centerpiece to a basketball team. Being the face of the franchise. This is it. Because if the Sixers are going to put all their eggs into the playoff basket, and I see both sides of the argument. You could tell me, hey, less likely Joel Embiid is unavailable in the playoffs if he plays less during the regular season. I get it. Load management, it's a thing. But you're also doing that with a guy that has never made it out of the second round. So you're putting all the eggs into a basket that Embiid has repeatedly tripped over, fallen on, and smashed all of the eggs. And you're going to put all of your eggs into that basket. That's fine, but this is it. This is it. If they keep Joel Embiid relatively healthy because they don't play him on back-to-backs. So they're basically punting on any idea that he wins the MVP. If they put all their eggs into the basket, that Joel Embiid healthy in the playoffs and they can contend for a title, and they don't go to the Eastern Conference Finals, then I am done listening to the idea. Forget that Joel Embiid is the best center in the NBA or the most valuable player. The jig will be up as it pertains to Joel Embiid being the focal point of a basketball franchise. I can't anymore. Right? I'm so sick of seeing people twist themselves into knots to try and make an argument for Joel Embiid. And I get it. It's not talent. It's not. It's health. Okay? But at some point, if you can't even load manage the guy to the point where he doesn't even play back-to-backs and he still can't be there for you in the postseason to get you to the Eastern Conference Finals, then that is it. Joel Embiid is Robin, and go find him a Batman. This is an important, consequential season for Joel Embiid. He does have the best team around him he has probably ever had in Philadelphia. Now, Paul George has his issues, for sure. But Paul George and Tyrese Maxey, with his ascension, this is the best group that Embiid has played with. And Embiid is still the focal point. Embiid is still the face of that team. If he cannot get them at least to the Eastern Conference Finals, because I don't know that anybody's stopping Boston from getting back to the finals. But if Philadelphia doesn't at least get there to play Boston, then that's it. And a more precipitous drop-off from being supposedly the best player in the world, or at least the league's most valuable player, I cannot recall. But it's health. And it's kind of part of the reason we've been having this debate for so long. But this is it. If Joel Embiid can't skip back-to-backs and still and doesn't get it to the Eastern Conference Finals, then that's it. That's it. We're done here. Like completely done. I know I should probably know that nobody has this. Is Georgiev starting tonight? I mean, I would assume he is. I mean, I can't find anybody that is a reliable reporter on the NHL saying that Georgiev's going to start tonight. I must be trying to make something where there's nothing. Of course, it'll be Alexander Georgiev tonight in goal. At some point, Jared Bednar is going to have to give Justus Onanen a shot in a real game, with all due respect to San Jose, which is probably very little, if I'm being honest. You have to throw. You can't keep putting Justus Onanen again. Last year is the Blackhawks. This year it's the Sharks. Or in mop-up duty. You got to put him in a game against a quality team and see what you have in him. You at least have to do that. We don't even have to go down the road of, is it time to panic with Georgiev and you got to get rid of him and you got to make a trade. Forget all that. Before any of that happens, you got to at least know a little bit better what you have in Justus Onanen. And I'm sorry, going up against the San Jose Sharks that didn't even have Macklin Celebrini available the other night is not a litmus test for Justus Onanen. There's got to be a game here coming up soon where you're like, Avs are playing a decent team and Onanen is in goal. And now let's assess. Let's see. And now they bring in Kakkonen to the mix. And it's like, how is all of this going to work? Who's Kakkonen there to put pressure on? Both guys, just Onanen? I was thinking about this today. Because, even if Alexander Georgiev raises his game to last year's level, you know how I feel about that. And I do think that the Avs need more from a goaltender, given the number of players that are currently out and the number of players they have lost from their team a couple of years ago. There's no reason for me to think that Igor Shesterkin is not going to be a New York Ranger. Okay, right now it just feels like negotiating. If I told you You got rid of somebody that is not McCarr, Rantanen, or McKinnon. But it could be anybody else. Could be Gabriel Landeskog. Could be Valeri Nichushkin. Could be Arturi Lehkonen. Could be Devontae. If I told you could keep the big three intact, but you would have to make major cost-cutting moves, would you do it if it would give you a chance to put Igor Shesterkin in the Avalanche net at $11.5 million? He reportedly turned down 8 years, $88 million. Not a lot of NHL goalies are worth that. In fact, I believe the list is one name long, but it's that name. I think you'd have to consider it. If you could keep Rantanen and McKinnon and McCarr together. I know, goaltending. Yeah, I understand the way the NHL is looking at it now. Like, everyone wants a 1A, 1B. They don't want a clear number one. They don't need, a throwback. And nor do those guys exist, except the guy in New York, right? He's that dude. Playing fantasy hockey. I think I would devote, let's say, $12 million to Igor Shesterkin. But maybe I'm getting too caught up in the current state of affairs with the Colorado Avalanche. So Avs and Kraken will join that game immediately following the Frank Serratori show. So this is a chance. I talked yesterday about Anaheim and San Jose. They're NHL empty calories. They're you're feeling bad about yourself, so you eat a carton of Haagen-Dazs and you feel better. It's not fixing your actual problems, but it's making you feel better. Seattle is certainly not one of the elite franchises in the NHL. They're not a Stanley Cup contender, but they're better than Anaheim or San Jose. So a little bit better barometer on whether the Avs have figured some things out. And if they can look better against a better team. So I'll be curious about that. Nuggets don't start till Thursday. So we wait and wait. Before I bid you adieu, do want to let you know if you're often feeling tired, lacking motivation and drive, gaining weight, or noticing a loss of muscle mass. These could all be signs of low testosterone. Don't wait. Find out. At Low T Center, they make it easy to get your levels checked. It's a simple blood test, and with their on-site lab, you'll get results back right then and there. They're not your typical doctor's office. Their physicians specialize in treating low T with testosterone replacement therapy, or TRT, for each patient. They got over a decade of experience helping patients, and they have a variety of treatment options, including physician-monitored at-home treatment plans that ship directly to your home each month without the need to come in for weekly visits. But that's down the road. First things first, you got to figure out, is it low T that's causing me to not be at my best? Go to lowtcenter.com to book your appointment today. That's lowtcenter.com. Low T Center, reinventing men's healthcare. What did I miss? Oh, I'll get this in here for Brett. Couple of texts. A lot of people don't know that Andy Dalton's dog is an Irish setter. Does that change things for you? This is my nightmare. This is where we're at. Kyle, should the Broncos focus on quality tight end versus a wide receiver? And then added, haha, you literally just said this. Yes, they should focus on a tight end before a wide receiver. The problem is supply and demand. There seems to be a supply of wide receivers. There doesn't seem to be the supply of tight ends. I don't even know if Cleveland is amenable to trading David Njoku. But I think it's incumbent on the Denver Broncos to find out. Pick up the phone. Say, hey, remember when we gave you Jerry Jeudy for next to nothing? And we said one day, you'll just owe us one. Well, this is that one. We would like to acquire the services of David Njoku, please. I don't know that that's how things went down with the trade of Jerry Jeudy. I just know that the Broncos gave Jerry Jeudy to the Browns for next to nothing. So we'll see where it goes. And some of these old reports about Cortland Sutton are resurfacing. Him maybe being traded to San Francisco, that's old news. But the guy, I know why they're reemerging. Guy had no catches, no targets. What's his role in the offense moving forward? Maybe a tomorrow topic. For now, I bid you adieu. My thanks to comedian Brad Williams for joining me. Make sure you get your tickets, pikespeakcenter.com, to go see him on November 3rd. I will chat with you tomorrow. I appreciate your patronage. Coming up next, the Frank Serratori Show. Talking about a couple of dubs, baby, here on Extra Sports 1300.